Hi everyone, my name's Joe. I'm here to give you a tutorial on Styrofoam printmaking. So printmaking is the process of creating an image on one surface and transferring it to another surface. And so printmaking allows you to create one image and make repeated copies of it, which is pretty cool. So today we'll be working with a technique called relief printmaking. We'll be using a piece of styrofoam, a wood stylus, some paint, and some paper to draw on, and then some paper to print onto. And so what we'll do is we'll carve our drawing, this is the one I made, into the styrofoam using our wood stylus. And we'll turn our drawing from this into this in the styrofoam, and this one has some paint on it already. So I pressed it onto some paint, and that's what's left over, and then we'll press this with the paint onto some paper. Get something like this. So I'll show you the details of it. Alright, so we've got our drawing of a cat. We've got our styrofoam block that we'll carve into. We've got our wood stylus to carve with. We've got a little bit of paint ready to go, and our paper that we're going to print on. So, since we've got our drawing, what we're going to do now is trace our drawing with the wood stylus onto the styrofoam. So I've made sure to make my drawing just the right size for the piece of styrofoam I have. So I'm just going to lay it over here, double check that it's lined up, and begin to trace the lines with the wood stylus. Now you don't have to use one of these wood styluses. You can use a pencil, but you just want to make sure that it's dull, because otherwise you might poke through the other side. And you could also use a pen, but you just want to make sure you don't leave any ink on your styrofoam. And I'm just going to go over and trace all these lines, and then I'll go back and go over the lines again to make sure they're nice and solid. So this is just to get the general image. And if it's tricky to keep the paper in place, you can also tape the paper with your drawing down to the styrofoam. So I can tell mine's kind of moving, but it's close enough. Okay, I think I got everything to start with. And you can see there the indentations that have been made with the stylus. Now they're pretty light, so that's why I'm going to go back through and trace them again. So when we're doing this, when we're drawing with this wood stylus, you know, we're creating this space in the styrofoam, and when we press the styrofoam to the ink, these little spaces, this is the area that the paint won't stick to. And so in the end, when we have our inked styrofoam and we press it, oops, I just went off, and we press it to the paper, the white space is going to be these lines that we've made. So it's kind of like an inverted version of the image. So that's something to keep in mind, but you'll see what I mean when we press the image to the paper. And you just want to make sure to get these lines nice and heavy and solid. If they're not as solid, then the paint will kind of bleed into these gaps, and then the image won't come through as clearly. So you just want to get them nice and good. I might even go back over some of these lines again. You also want to be careful though not to punch a hole in the styrofoam. Okay, that seems pretty solid. So I think we're ready to apply ink to our styrofoam. So what you want to do, you want to get a pretty small amount of ink. Right here you can see it's not you know, super runny. And if you have too much ink, then the ink will kind of bleed into these spaces and it won't be as clear, and it'll kind of smear when we apply it to the paper. So just you know, a small amount of paint should do the trick. So let's go ahead and apply the paint to our styrofoam, and to do that I'm just gonna press it down, and then using my hand I'm just gonna press into the styrofoam to make sure that the paint sticks to the whole piece. And so I'll just go back through and kind of pressing it. You don't want to like smear it around on the ink, because that's how you can get the ink to bleed into those lines that we've drawn. And I've kind of got some ink on the back of it, but that's all right. And we can see I didn't get paint on this corner, I guess, but I think that'll be all right. You can kind of see what that looks like when I press it onto the paper. And so on another plate, what I'm going to do is set our styrofoam with the paint on it, and then I'm going to grab the paper and I'm going to do it in this top corner, and I'm just going to press the paper on to the styrofoam, and kind of using the same technique. Again, you don't really want to like smear it around, because that's when you're going to get the image to not come out properly. So now I'm going to peel the styrofoam off, and we can look at how it came out. So it's kind of interesting. You can see that you know, in some of these spots maybe I didn't get quite enough paint on it, but I kind of like these imperfections. The ink didn't really bleed into the lines too much, so that's pretty good. But yeah, maybe I should have used a little bit more paint. So that's kind of the basic idea. Now you can redo this. So like this same styrofoam, I can re-ink it, get more paint on it, and then press it again and again. Each time it's going to come out looking a little bit different, I'm sure, but that's kind of the beauty of this system, is these little imperfections, you know, give it character. I think it's pretty fun. Now you can also experiment, like if I had filled in those lines when I carved, if I carved in that spot, then those eyes would be all white. So that might give you some ideas. Okay, so that's how we do this styrofoam transfer. Okay, so one thing that you may not have noticed with our cat, because it's kind of a symmetrical drawing, like each half of the drawing is kind of the same, but when we printed it, it actually ended up reversed. So it's kind of like the image got turned backwards. And that's not a big deal if you draw something like this, but if you want to write words with your styrofoam, then you will want to keep in mind that when we end up printing it on the paper, the words are going to be backwards. So I can show you how you can plan for that. So right here I've written out my words, and I've written it in a dark marker. I used a Sharpie, but you can use any other kind of marker, and that's just so that the words bleed through to the other side of the paper. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my styrofoam block and I'm going to flip the paper upside down and then trace it just like we did with the cat. And so on the styrofoam, it's going to look like the words are backwards and all wrong, but when we print it, they're going to be just right. So same thing as before, I'm just tracing with these wood stylus. And then after I finish tracing, I will go through and make sure the lines are all nice. Okay, let's go back through and get these lines all good. And something to keep in mind is sometimes smaller lines, like some of these letters are kind of small. Those might be harder to carve, or at least harder to get to come through clearly. So we'll see how this goes. I might have written too small. Okay. That seems pretty good, and you can see that the words are backwards compared with how it was originally. So now let's get some paint on here and see how it turns out. So I'm going to go kind of diagonally. And again, I'm just making sure that all the spots I want to get ink, or paint rather, have paint. Oops, I got some paint on there. This corner doesn't have paint on it, so I'm gonna, oops, pick it up. Let me just make sure. So let me just press into there to get some paint on there. Okay, let's see if that works. So then, just as before, I'm gonna lay that down and I'm gonna grab my piece of paper and I'm gonna use the other corner and I'm just gonna press into it. And now I'm gonna peel it away. And we can see how it turned out. So you can kind of read it, but it looks like the part of the H and the E didn't come out quite as well. And I think that's either because I didn't draw the line deep enough, or I didn't get enough paint on the styrofoam. But again, I kind of like the imperfections of this. And the cool thing is that you could print it over and over again and see all the different kinds of imperfections that come through. But the important thing is, if you want to include any writing in your styrofoam print artwork, you want to make sure to carve it into the styrofoam backwards. And you can do that just like I did by doing your drawing in a dark marker and then flipping it upside down and carving the reverse side. So I hope that helps, and I hope you have fun making artwork with this. And you can also experiment with using different colors. And so like I could print this same design with different colors, but I just want to rinse this off with water and and dry it off with a paper towel before I do a different color on here. But yeah, I hope that helps. Have fun making your art. See you next time.